So more than likely, every client that says that they worked the 12 steps and it didn't work for them, they never worked the 12 steps.
Right.
They basically just gave the 12 steps lip service, right? They
Mhm.
didn't invest in it all. So the beneficialness of having a community that's invested in the 12 steps, the people that are on the fence or on the edge of the funnel for the 12 steps, they start having an experience with it because it's the whole culture.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Doerge, and I'm the founder and CEO of New Waters Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Finding New Waters. Our goal in creating Finding New Waters is to provide a resource for families to help navigate the complexities of supporting a loved one struggling with substance use or mental health. When we find ourselves in crisis due to one of these issues, most people have no idea where to turn. We hope to shed some light onto what is often the darkest hour for many families. All right. Welcome, everybody. We've got Eric Button with us here today. Eric is the family liaison and senior business development representative for Burning Tree Programs. Welcome, Eric. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Graham.
Of course.
Welcome.
So, Eric
Yeah.
and I go back a little ways, back to kind of Texas days, and great to reconnect with you. I always like starting these podcasts off. Obviously, want to give our listeners a little bit of information on your background, and how did you get into this field? How did you start working in the behavioral health field? And maybe just a little bit about your story.
Well, first off, I'm honored to be on New Waters Recovery podcast, Finding New Waters. And I got sober on the 21st day of July 2005, so I just celebrated 18 years. Was that last? That was last week,
Okay.
and it was a morning I was not planning on getting sober, but the universe used the legal system to help guide me into this funnel of change, right? And
Mhm.
I got to be a client that went to Burning Tree. I had many attempts at getting sober previously. I always seemed to have the jobs, which always afforded me to buy the legal representation that could allow me to continue to live in a way that I thought I was in control of what was going on.
Mhm.
Last time I got arrested, I already had bond paid at a bonding company. All they had to do is just find my name that comes up on the computer, and I got out. So
You
that's
had
how
a
I
tab with
operated.
the bond company.
Yeah,
So,
I mean
yeah.
that. Yeah, and it took me a long time to buy into what this theory of honesty is, and because I thought I was in control of everything. So I got to go to Burning Tree as a client.
Awesome.
I would say I was not. I It's what ultimately saved my life. Um, it took me probably 7 months to buy into being honest,
Yeah.
um, and ever since, um, I have maintained my sobriety, and I have enlarged my sobriety on a daily basis. I'm
Mhm.
sponsored. I have sponsees in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, I got out of Burning Tree in September of 2006. And while I was a client at Burning Tree, there was a gentleman who was the CEO. His name was Mark Houston.
Mhm.
Mark Houston called me. I was going to go work for a guy. I was good. So my entire adult life, from basically 15 till 30, 36, I was in the car parts business and in management.
Mhm.
My last job, I was at International Truck and Engine Corporation as the modification department lead, and I had like 23 guys working under me.
Wow.
Um, I got out of Burning Tree. This is a time when there really wasn't a lot of aftercare when you leave treatment. There was like Oxford houses, but sober living was just starting. I got out of Burning
Yeah.
Tree. I went to an Oxford house, and I was going to go work for a guy that was opening a body shop up in Austin, Texas. And my phone rang, and it was a friend of mine who I got sober with at Burning Tree, named Greg Rolfe and Mark Houston, and
Hmm.
they called and asked if I had ever thought about working in the treatment field.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I hadn't. I got a job. I mean, I was going to go work for this guy named Dave H. And, I would have started out making $20 an hour and, quickly would have worked my way up.
Right.
So I went out
We
to a
call
place
that
called,
sobriety, a recovery job, right?
yeah,
Early
recovery
on,
job.
getting that recovery job, and obviously we recommend to young men and people kind of in that early phase of recovery, get something that's going to be a little bit lower stress, pay some of the bills, but nothing kind of too overwhelming, right?
Yeah, not a career job.
Right. Right.
Get your feet wet. Put put my recovery first, right? Home
100%.
group, home group. Continue to work with my sponsor, and continue to work the steps. And then I had a referral for a therapist that I was continuing to see, and just putting the actions into realization.
Mm.
And phone rang, so I went out to see Mark at his new place in Maynard, Texas, called Mark Houston Recovery. It was actually called the Last Resort when they first opened, and something just told me that, hey, this is kind of cool. So I took a $9 an hour job, $9. I
Wow.
had made I don't think I ever made $9 an hour
Right.
until then, and driving the guys and just being invested with them on this path of changing their trajectory.
Mm.
And Mark Houston's flourished. It took off. I opened up a transition program called Addiction Directions, and we worked with all of the clients coming out of Mark Houston. So we had a very robust sober living environment with post treatment discharge plan implementation program called ADAP, Addiction Directions Accountability Program. And it took off, and we had a lot of success. And like everything in life and recovery, things change. There's an ebb
Mhm.
and flow to everything, and we lost Mark, unfortunately, and some of the business partners in the process. Uh, I closed down Addiction Directions, and I had an opportunity from our owner. We're family owned at Burning Tree. A gentleman named David Elliott reached out and asked if I ever thought about coming to work for him.
Mm.
And this November, I will have been with Burning Tree for 10 years.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
Burning
Which is
Tree
a
is,
very long time in the recovery
Recovery
field.
industry, yeah, yeah.
It's,
yeah.
if you're somewhere for more than 3 years, it seems like a lifetime.
And it really falls in line with who I am. I'm a very loyal type person. As you can tell, I was very loyal to the drugs and alcohol I was using for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, and I have been in the business development role and have been in the family communication role and connecting with the families since I went to Burning Tree. And Burning Tree's family owned. It was started in 1999 by David Elliott. Um, our initial program is in Kaufman, Texas. That's our long-term program. Average length of stay is anywhere from 8 to 14 months of residential treatment, with a
Mm.
12-month transition period after.
Amazing.
We usually seem to have a census of 22 to 28 men and women. That just seems to be our ebb and flow. We're not for everybody. We are for the chronic relapser whom have a family component or I would say, a power source in their life that continues to enable them to run the show and make decisions,
Hmm.
which then in turn allows them to continue to just go to treatment after treatment after treatment. Average
Hmm.
client's probably been to 6 previous treatments with failure.
Yep.
Um, all of our staff, except for our clinical director, who's in recovery for Al-Anon, is in recovery. Our
Yeah.
executive director, Jesse Earwood, he's a fellow alum of Burning Tree, and we have a couple of clinicians that are fellow alums. Majority of our staff, I would say 95% of them, are all long-term employees.
Mm.
And when I say long-term, I mean 8 years plus.
Yeah.
You guys are
Uh,
so long term over there. That's crazy to go someplace 14 months and then work there 10 years. Like
I
they
know.
must serve good food or something,
Right,
you know?
right.
yeah,
Well,
I
it's so essential, and I know Ryan is dealing with this on a daily basis, right? And that was one of the real reasons I wanted to have you on here today was to kind of talk about this long term aspect, right? And I love that you highlight that your program is really well suited for kind of the chronic relapse, right?
yes,
Because what we're seeing, you know, a ton of it here at New Waters, and really everybody's seen across the country, is a lot of these young adult clients who are just, you know, we're not really identifying truly what's happening under the surface. Is there some sort of underlying mental health or learning disability, or maybe on the spectrum, or, you know, and really just kind of pigeonholing them into this same kind of cookie cutter primary substance use track that maybe isn't hitting all the marks, right? And they don't get the help that they need, and then ultimately they're in treatment 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Families down $500,000, you know, putting them in treatment, and their kid is still sick.
yeah,
So I'm a big proponent of this, of the long-term treatment really does work, right? Statistically, we know you have a better shot the longer term you stay in treatment. So
yeah, yeah.
talk about
The,
that a little, and what you all do there and your philosophy on that.
the huge advantage of long term is every client comes to Burning Tree and they've got other diagnoses other than drugs and alcohol, right? They
Mm.
do have some mental health. They have some diagnoses of depression or schizoaffective or bipolar or anxiousness. And what ends up happening in long term treatment is the client gets to get back to this homeostasis, right? They're going to bed at a set time. They're getting 8 hours of sleep. They're monitored in their sleep, right? Bed
Mm.
checks, ensuring that they're making observations. Oh, we notice that
Mhm.
Eric is quite a snorer. Okay, maybe we can do something to help create a better sleep for Eric. Or so we know about everything that's going on. Um, they get up at a set time. They do prayer and meditation. They eat breakfast at a set time. They exert themselves physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. So
Mm.
we're hitting on all these aspects during the day. Master level clinicians and working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous independently, but
Mm.
everything's intertwined. Our
Right.
psychiatrist, Dr. Seacrest, ASAM psychiatrist, he's very versed at working with Burning Tree. He's been with us for 15 years. He's also a fellow at Presbyterian Dallas in the J5 section of the hospital, which is their
Mm.
mental health wing. He's very versed. I would say, he is a med minimalist. He's
Mm.
also does psychotherapy in conjunction with his prescribing if they need
Love it.
anything. Um, and he sees them for a complete hour.
Amazing, right? What an
Yeah,
anomaly.
out on Zoom. He's out there
Uh,
and he's interacting with the staff daily or weekly. He's interacts with staff on Mondays by Zoom, and then when he comes out to see the clients on Fridays, They meet with him and they go over everything. They share observations of what's going on with each client that he's seeing, and everything is very intertwined. The
Yeah.
clients are working the steps independently from what they're doing clinically, and what that means is staff is not taking them through the steps.
Hmm.
An independent sponsor, so they go out to meetings every night of the week except for Sunday nights. We have an in-house meeting. We're taking them into Dallas. They're driving in vans,
Yep.
and they're going to gender-specific meetings, or they're going to aftercare meeting, or they're going to uh, Wednesdays to our Dallas office so they can see their sponsors in person. We make it easier for the sponsors instead of driving out 45 miles east and south of downtown Dallas. We're bringing the clients into Dallas. The sponsors can come out and work with their sponsees on Sundays, and everything is communicated and it's very systematic. A client works the steps, and the sponsor has signed off on them to move forward from, say, step one to step two, and then the client puts in a request to present to the staff. They share what that current step means to them, and then the staff collectively votes on if they should move forward or if there's something that we think is amiss. We're going to get
Yeah.
with the sponsor and make some suggestions. We're not guiding and directing the sponsor-sponsee relationship, but I would say we're getting shoulder to shoulder with them to work on a common goal. I would say 95% of our clients, they're all being sponsored by alum that have been separated from Burning Tree for at least 2 years post completing the entire program.
Right.
I
Um,
love how you guys intertwine that clinical work, that like cutting edge clinically astute work with the 12-step modality. Because so often
yeah,
we see people lean either one way or the other, right? Where it's like you do the 12 steps, but you're not allowed to take antipsychotics, or you're allowed to do everything but the 12 steps related to spirituality. And like holding that
right,
balance is just so important.
right.
Eric, I'm really curious. Like, I could see why families would be attracted to this program. Like, we see plenty of families that are like, "Oh yeah, you can lock them up for 8 to 14 months. Like, that's not a problem." My curiosity is for you yourself. What drove you to engage in this long-term treatment program?
Well, leverage. Okay,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for leverage, my leverage was legal, correct?
Right.
Um, there's all kinds of and leverage seems like a kind of it's a truthful word, but
Hmm.
I would say we could use opportunity.
Right. A little bit
There ain't a
of a
single
softer word. Yeah.
client that's coming to Burning Tree and they're like, I want to go to long term treatment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But the families are on board, and most families are on board until we start asking them to get involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're wanting them to work with a counselor, therapist, or an addiction consultant, or some type of extra professional involved in their life. We're also wanting them to be invested in their own recovery. So Al-Anon, Families Anonymous, things like this. And we're holding them accountable to putting those actions forward. We're wanting the entire system to start having a communication of recovery. So there are families that are on board and then they become resistant,
Mhm.
just like their loved one. I like using the analogy of a funnel. Burning trees like a funnel. There's a big end on a funnel. You know what that looks like? And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yep.
That big funnel is the universe using leverage or opportunity, whatever you want to call it, to get this client inside the funnel. And I'll refer to the funnel as change.
Mm.
Several of these clients that come to Burning Tree or have had the opportunity to come to New Waters, they get in the funnel, but they always seem to hold on to the rim, or they just stick their toe in, and they're really good at telling people what they want to hear. Basically, their
Yeah.
power source, right?
Right.
Oh, I got this. I know exactly what to do now. But they
Right.
never really invest in getting in the funnel. That funnel is representative of the outer part of the funnel is resistance. The inner part of the funnel is the flow of life, and it's the acceptance, right? As a client gets invested in creating a relationship with honesty, they're going to move towards the center of the funnel, and they're going to have an experience with it, and they're going to like it. Then they're going to hear some truth about themselves, or they're going to bump up against themselves, or some kind of circumstance is going to come involved in their life. Most, I would say, 100% of chronic relapsers are resistant to adversity. So adversity is going to come up, and they're going to migrate toward the edge of the funnel, trying to get out. But as they move down and they start having experience, the distance between the resistance and the acceptance, the length of time becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. And Burning Tree is not about just holding on to a client and hope through osmosis that they're just going to change. We're going to be constantly pushing them to venture out to the edge of the funnel so they can come back to the center. And as a client engages in accepting diversity on life's terms, then they come out the other end of that funnel. They've been through the 12 steps, and it's about wide open freedom. That's what recovery guarantees.
I love that.
So that's the
I love that
analogy that I
analogy.
like to use. There's many ups and downs, twists and turns to it. And Lord knows I had many ups and downs, twists and turns to it. But life is so rewarding when we take the position that was really intended for us when we were born.
Yeah. And I think that, when I think about, these long-term programs and all that, and I know Ryan's dealing with this on a daily basis where people are just, they can't even fathom the fact that we're asking them to take even 3 months to go and do something like this. And the reality is, listen, we're asking you to make an entire psychic shift here, right? And that is not going to happen in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, right? And it's just not. Maybe you'll have a lot of insight and you'll have a lot of growth during that period, but you're still truly, the foundation is not there, right? And it's super high risk. So, but it's really interesting where, I just think back to my own, experience in treatment and all that. And I did pretty much close to 90 days in an inpatient residential facility, and then did sober living after that. And really, I had no intention of doing that long a period of time. But, I had the blessing of, while I was in treatment, just understanding that, like, okay, life is not over now because I can't drink or use for the rest of my life. Like, look at all the amazing things I can do now. Look at all the things that I've always wanted to do, but I've never done because I've been sitting in a basement drinking by myself for 5 years. And when you can kind of attach to that and have that perspective, and it's really hard for people to get there, right? But it certainly is not going to happen in 2-3 weeks in most cases. It's just not. And then when I look back at that time, sorry, go on.
Yeah, just like you drinking in that basement. You didn't just start drinking immediately in the basement.
Not
It
at all.
took time to get to that point. That's all I
100%.
wanted.
Yep.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I look back at that, basically year that I took to really kind of focus on building this foundation, and it was like the blink of an eye. I mean, I think back to that year, and it just went, so fast, and really, I would never change a thing. I'm so glad that I did what I did, and I put that time in, and I had I just had the awareness to do that, and I truly feel like I was touched by the hand of God. And he just really kind of gave me that awareness to say, you know what, I'm just going to get out of my own way. I'm going to surrender to the process, and I'm going to do whatever you guys tell me I need to do. And when I did that, it got so easy. It got so easy.
Yeah.
So
The resistance stopped, and you got in the middle of the funnel.
right. 100%.
So many of us, we're not willing to accept that we have a fatal disease.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. That's what I see in our clients as we're working with them again and again. They think this is an overreaction because they don't have a fatal disease. If we were marching in those rooms and telling them they had pancreatic cancer and this was a type of chemotherapy that would affect that, how we wouldn't be able to hold them back from the chemo clinic, right? Wouldn't matter if it was in Texas, wouldn't matter if it took 6 months. And that was true for me too. And I had to realize that's exactly what I have. I had to realize that. I had to realize I was going to die from it because otherwise I wasn't going to put it first. You know, I'm someone who personally, I had a very limited, kind of recovery and treatment experience. I had to go and figure it out on my own because resources and insurance, they just weren't available at that time. And I would much rather do this I would have much rather done it on a ranch in Texas than working in a Chinese food restaurant. You know what I mean? Going to 7 a.m. meetings because I work all night. And I think about the pain that I put my family to, not just in addiction, but in early sobriety too. Getting to know my now wife, you know, to be able, what we're offering people is relief from a fatal disease in as comfortable a location as possible. But until they can hear that, they're not going to accept it. And it's a wonderful that they get to wait and they get to have all those breakthroughs. And I did have those breakthroughs in sobriety, but to be able to be shepherded and be in an intimate community, there's no intimate community, I'm sure, like what you guys have going on at Burning Tree.
Yeah.
The way that people get to know each other and hold each other, it's just, I'm sure it's wonderful to be a part of.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, we don't recover by ourselves.
No. 100%.
So
Yeah, and that's the beauty
what's
of this life after, right? I mean, it becomes so full, and you know, I also just wanted to kind of touch on, you know, the other component that I think is really important for families to hear is they're kind of trying to navigate, you know, these complex issues with their loved ones. Is, you know, the fact that you are kind of a mom and pop operation, right? You're a small operation. You run pretty lean, you know, lean from the census aspect, but not from staffing. But you guys, I think that is a huge thing for me, right? When we're referring clients out, we're typically trying to look for a smaller, more boutique type program that's kind of family owned and operated. In my experience, it's just, you know, you're going to get better service, you're going to get better care. You know, clinical team, you know, a lot of the time is just going to be a little bit more bought in. They're probably treated a little bit better, culture's a little bit better. So, you know, yeah, talk about that a little bit if you could.
so the biggest advantage is the length of time for these clients. It's very peer driven, right? So you have senior clients that's been there for 8, 9, 10 months, so they get to implement the principles of recovery in their life, and they get to give back to the newcomers that are coming in. So that aspect is huge on building community, and then that community is what's going to translate into them implemented in their life. The other thing on the family aspect of it is they have been so wrapped up and so involved in trying to fix it, but not really taking an investment in fixing themselves, that this period of time where, and quite frankly, I'm just going to say it, their loved one is their drug.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
So as they start having an experience of being free from having to fix it or control it, um, both sides of the coin can heal, and then both sides of the coin can come back together in a new relationship. And that,
Yep.
I think that answers what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, obviously in the family, you know, programming that you guys do now, I would assume you have kind of several family
Yeah.
meetings or on campus events or throughout the time that you're there?
So this is so with family,
Yeah.
a lot of communication with them in the beginning. We do what we call a post admission intervention. That's a process that I get to facilitate.
Nice.
Client's been with us 2 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
95% of the clients, unless I'm out of town, I've got to meet them when they were in detox that are coming to the ranch. So I'm making connection with them in the very beginning, or I've talked to them on the very front end, or sometimes I've talked to the family on the very front end. So a client comes to the ranch, we're assembling the entire support system, right? The client's counselor, myself, the power in their life could be mom, dad. Mom's in Atlanta, dad's in Jacksonville, Florida. They're divorced, and then maybe the loved one has 4 siblings. Bringing everybody together, creating a relationship with them, meeting with them, expanding on and uh, inviting them to set realistic boundaries, not boundaries that they think we want to hear, but realistic boundaries, because what we want to do is help solidify this client in the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to test the boundaries because they have already been testing boundaries, or families tell, oh, if you don't do this, you're not going to get any more money, or we're not going to do this. No, if you leave, don't call me because I'm not answering the phone. Well, that's not realistic. Okay.
Right.
We want to help the family set something that is their truth. So we set these boundaries. We bring the client in. They're only going to see their loved one 10, 20 minutes. It's basically a business meeting that we're conducting. And that business meeting is for their loved one that's at Burning Tree to hear what the family's boundaries are and what their hopes are, and what an opportunity that they are giving their loved one.
Yeah, I love
Then
that.
the client gets to accept, or they may bump up against themselves. They may be angry. It's very organic,
Yeah.
and then they accept what's going on, and then we want to hear what their commitment is. And what we're looking for is for them to verbally commit. And we know that every addict alcoholic is very good at committing to doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to us to help them put the action forward to actually realize it.
Yeah.
That's the first process. We don't have visitation every month at Burning Tree. We have visitation every other month. A client will have had an opportunity to be with us for at least 30 days prior to a visit. So we have visitation every other month, every even month, which would be the third Sunday of the month. When a family has a loved one that's with us, their first visitation, they get to attend a family workshop that we facilitate at our Dallas office. That family workshop consists of our owner and founder, our executive director, our clinical director, our transitions director, an alumni, family, myself, and sometimes our chief operating officer, who's also a alum of the program, Brooke McKenzie, will be there.
Very
And
cool.
then the families. And then what we're doing is our goal is to answer their questions about what Burning Tree is and what our processes are without them having to ask them. But then giving them a format where they can ask, and it's very interactive, and it's very the alumni and the family, they do a real good job of explaining what's gone on,
Mm.
what helped them
Yeah.
change, and the roadblocks. And then we don't have family program until the client is through and in the amends process. We want them to internalize what's going on. The family program is a 3-day intensive. Usually it's 2 to 4 clients, just depending on the lineup,
Mm.
and their loved ones. Some clients will go through family 2 or 3 times,
Wow.
depending on what the family dynamics are. It's
That's good.
we bring in a lady named I'm drawing a blank. She's got a counseling office, Angie Booya. She has a counseling office in Dallas called Sparrow House Counseling. Very, very
She an
prominent.
LMFT?
She is LPC,
LPC. Got it.
LPC, and then our clinical director, and they facilitate. So we have somebody that comes in that's not really connected with the family or the client, and then works in conjunction with our clinical director, and it's a lot of psychodrama, different modalities that they use in the process, and it's a 3 day experience.
That's awesome.
Every family that comes to Burning Tree, they have been through numerous family programs and they're very jaded.
Sure.
True.
So it's
Or
very
they want to
different.
treat treatment. They want to treat treatment like a fishbowl with which to look at the
Yeah,
loved one, right?
yeah. And then they do family program, and then the client continues to do treatment. And before they transition from residential treatment, they start integrating into transitions, and that's a slow process. Um, we give them a little bit of room, pull back, see how they handle it, give them a little bit more room, let them navigate some adversity, pull back, and it's a very organic process. Each client has different needs and different circumstances. Um, we do lots of trauma work in conjunction with treatment.
Mm.
All kinds of modalities that they use. Drew McLaughlin and our clinical director Megan Bowman, they'll do EMDR and some psychodrama, and they'll utilize equine therapy and other opportunities. And sometimes
Yeah.
we may find that a client needs a little bit more, and we use some partners, like on-site or milestones
Right.
or the bridge or something like that in conjunction with. Then they'll come back and continue their treatment. Or what
Oh,
we're
wow.
very collaborative, and we want the best to maximize the opportunity for the client to get and stay sober, because that's what we're about.
So you've had clients go to on-site and do, a trauma workshop, the Living Center program, I would assume, and
Yeah.
then come back to you guys. That's awesome.
Yep.
What I
Yeah.
what I love about this process, I think, is
Yeah.
it's really evocative of actual recovery. Like
Yeah.
30-day residential treatment is fantastic. I think we can all agree on that, especially for those it's effective for. You go in for 30 days, you do like the graduation ceremony at the end, like everyone claps, but it also paints this picture, kind of like the show Intervention, that recovery is just this straight line up, and we're just
Mhm.
going to kind of rocket ship right up. And my experience working in transitional living is there are going to be peaks and there are going to be valleys throughout that recovery process, and we're going to take some steps back. And hopefully it doesn't involve use, right? But we're going to crash sometimes. And for someone to be present and to attend to that and just acknowledge it as a reality is so, so important in the recovery landscape.
Mm.
Oh yeah. And the other piece is our clients. They're going to be invested in the recovery process, right, along the whole thing. When they get ready to make amends, they're going to be instructed through their sponsor. They're going to put in for a request to go on a pass to make amends. They're going to take a buddy with them that's a peer in the community, and they're going to go on a men's process. They're going to go on a men's trip so they can get some more power in their life and
Mm.
project accepting what their past was and making amends for it. Like, hey, this is what I did. Is there anything I missed? What is it I can do to make this right? And doing the actions of doing this, we want them to experience all of the steps.
Yeah. And what are you doing with clients who are, anti 12 steps, that are just really not involved in or open to, any sort of 12-step programming? Are they just not
So
a candidate for you all?
I would say this is the common thing that comes to Burning Tree, or the common scenario. A client will come to us and they say, "Oh, I've done the 12 steps. They don't work for me."
Yeah. Tell me what that looks like. What did
Um,
that experience look like? Is that you go into a couple room meetings and just sitting in the back of the room, never introducing yourself, never talking to anybody? Because if that's what it looked like, then, that's not really what recovery is, right?
yeah. So more than likely, every client that says that they worked the 12 steps and it didn't work for them, they never worked the 12 steps.
Right.
They 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 uh, basically just gave the 12 steps lip service, right? They
Mhm.
didn't invest in it all. So the beneficialness of having a community that's invested in the 12 steps, the people that are on the fence or on the edge of the funnel for the 12 steps, they start having an experience with it because it's the whole culture.
Right.
And then once they do, then they take off.
Yeah.
And that's
So
been our
you'll
experience.
bring those folks in and hopefully they attach to it. They,
Oh yeah.
it's the attraction, right? And hopefully they see the
Yeah.
rest of the crew is all super engaged and involved and then they hop on board as well once they kind of see the
Yes.
benefits from that aspect. Yeah.
And
Eric,
the other
I got a
aspect is, oh, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. One of the things that I think we see is a lot of guys who they've been institutionalized. Sometimes they've gone to therapeutic boarding schools or wilderness programs starting at 16. And these guys have been in treatment for 10 years. And there's a fear that there's a little treatment dependence there.
Mm.
Like they can live in these institutionalized environments, but they're scared or they can't engage. Is there a point? I know you guys are long term. Is there a point where you have to push some guys out of the nest? And what does that look like?
Oh, yes. So we have an owner and we have a philosophy of Burning Tree. We're not in the business of taking these families' money to change their loved one. If the client continues to not put the effort forward, and it's all about behavior, right? If they're not putting the investment or following directions or doing the things that we're expecting them to do, we're not just gonna hold on to them. We're gonna find
Mm.
an opportunity for them to move on somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or a client is going to find an exit because they don't want to do what we're asking them to do,
Yeah.
right? And then they hope that their family's going to cave and go back to what they used to do, which was pick up the pieces and allow them to continue to do what they do. Majority of the time, I would say 30% of the clients that come to Burning Tree, they're going to test the waters. They're going to walk
Mhm.
off. They're going to leave. They're going to see if the family's really invested in holding the line for them to be in this funnel of change. Um, and what that does, it helps the collective group, right? Um,
Yeah.
Deepen their investment in putting the effort forward.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Burning Tree is not easy.
No. None of
Um,
this is easy, right?
high reward, um, very high reward for the entire system.
And what's
I
your
want to tell you something.
success rate? Do you guys track that? Do you have any idea
So it's
what your
very
success rate
hard.
is?
It's very hard to track that.
Mm.
I can tell you this from my personal experience and from many others that I know that are in their recovery in their life. The clients and the families. So the clients that worked all 12 steps and were invested in following directions and were invested in always looking for opportunities to not fall back into their resistance, the success rate is huge.
Yeah.
Those families, those families that invest in their own recovery, 12-step recovery, in conjunction with working with other professionals involved in their life, that increases. The families can destroy what was gone, what took 5 months. They can tear it down in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
As long as the entire system has made these productive changes and then got into action around those changes, the success rate is very high. The other thing that goes on with increasing the success rate is, especially with the family and especially with the client, they know everything about what we do and how we do it. The client knows what the expected length of stay is. The expected length of stay is based upon them and their progress. We don't want anybody at Burning Tree Ranch any longer than they need to be there. The only thing that's fixed on time is the transition program, and that's 12 months. The other thing, we are nicotine free at Burning Tree, have been
Oh.
for 7 years.
Wow.
I would say the number of smokers and tobacco users has decreased over time.
Yeah.
What I mean is, we do probably 1 to 3 admissions a month.
Mm.
The past few months, none of those people were nicotine users, which
Wow.
is astounding.
Yeah, it's
But
amazing.
we do have the ones that are, right,
Yeah.
and we completely take the nicotine out of the equation. If they're dependent upon nicotine, we're going to have a cessation plan. We're either going to use a patch or we're going to use a lozenge. The families are on board with it, and the clients are on. I mean, they're not on board with it, but that's the fact.
That's the
We're
yeah.
not gonna we're about setting the example of 100% honesty at the get go, which then in turn is going
Burning
to
Tree
add to
would
their
have been for me.
success. Pardon?
I said I didn't know if Burning Tree would have been for me, man. I'm with you 100%. I know it would have saved my life, but I don't know if I could have quit smoking. That's something.
Well,
That's,
you
it's like
evidently
caffeine.
you didn't need Burning Tree.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. That's true. What about caffeine? You put caffeine in the coffee?
So we do have caffeine, yes.
Oh, nice.
All
Okay.
right. Well, you got
Little, yeah, a little.
It's
You
not
know,
lean
They
alive.
don't-
The lean
you
alive
can't drink
yeah.
caffeine till bedtime, but yes, you have caffeine. Yeah. And in
Let's,
the transition process is completely nicotine free,
wow.
which adds to success.
Yeah, it does. Yep. That's
And
amazing.
we're not afraid that it's going to affect a client coming to us because we're not allowing them to smoke. We're just not
Yeah.
we're invested in 100% success, and we want to
And I
do
think
the
that says
things.
so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
that says so much about, you guys as a program, your ethics, really kind of standing behind what you kind of are set forward as your mission, and because most programs do allow it, quite frankly, because people won't admit, in a lot of cases, if you can't smoke at a facility. So obviously, you guys are creating a barrier there, but it's important to you. Higher success rate, better outcomes. So that's amazing. I think that says a lot about kind of what you guys are doing in general.
Yeah.
And how invested you are in truly making people well, as opposed to just getting heads in beds down at the ranch.
Correct.
There,
Correct.
Yep.
because it would be so easy to fold on that. But the clients that you guys are dealing with, they have to know that there are natural consequences and that there are lines in the sand and there are rules that you just have to follow in life, and it's something that I was so resistant to learning. And so many of us, we just naturally chomp at the bit. To be told no, I mean, do you remember how much energy you would invest to not be told no in something?
Well,
Yeah.
we like flipping the verbiage. I really like using the verbiage of this is something I get to do
Hmm. Yeah, I
instead
like
of
that. And I
no.
love opportunity as well, right?
And
It's
opportunity,
all
and it's all about the culture.
and a shift in perspective, right? When you kind of make that little bit of a shift, you're like, oh, okay, that is a little bit of a different connotation now. So, but well, listen, Eric, we're coming up on our time, and
Yeah.
it's been such a pleasure getting to see you, and we haven't connected in a while. I'm actually back in
Well,
Texas next week, so we'll have to
are
connect.
you?
But do you
We'll
have
have lunch.
anything that? Yeah, let's have lunch. But is there anything that you want to plug here? Maybe Burning Tree's website or anything like that?
I mean, just burningtree.com. But what I really want to ask is you, Graham,
Yes,
and I
sir.
really like the name New Waters
Thank you.
and the message that it puts out there in the
Yeah.
universe.
Yeah.
How did New Waters? How did it
Come about.
come to? Yes, please.
So that was really my wife and I, really just kind of brainstorming when we were kind of creating the program, and I think it probably actually was my wife who came up with it. She's really good at that kind of stuff, when I heard it, I was like, ooh, I like that. But we were just really kind of floating ideas, and just the idea of, water, I think is a very kind of powerful energy, and is an important energy in my life. I'm a Pisces. I love the water. I love free diving. I love spear fishing. I love fly fishing. So, I really wanted to have a water aspect in it, and then just the aspect of finding new waters, finding new waterways, and a new life, recovery, and all of that aspect of it kind of fit well. So
Well,
it was good. It fit, and we're doing great here, and it's been a really fun project to get off the ground.
and then how did you come about? New Waters is in North Carolina. How did you come about finding your location?
So there was a couple gentlemen here that I really knew that I could build something around, and knowing that I would kind of be back and forth from Texas to Carolina. So, really in looking at, the market, and obviously Raleigh is an incredible city to have a business right now. It's blowing up, very similar to Austin in a lot of ways. It almost
Right.
reminds me of Austin kind of 10 years ago, right? And tons of industry, coming to Raleigh, and so there was just a lot of really positive reasons to do something here, and coupled with the fact that they needed resources. Right, there wasn't really anything like what we're doing here, at this kind of higher level, kind of smaller boutique, but really sophisticated detox. So the opportunity was great, and we had the team was here, and we just kind of we went for it, and it's been great.
Well, I'm excited to hear about how you
Thank
came
you.
up with the name and the location, and I'm
Yeah.
really honored to meet you both on your show. And
Thank you, man.
thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Fantastic. I know we're honored to have you, and always great to connect with you, man, and see you at
Yeah.
conferences, and all dapper in your orange and orangey grateful.
There you go.
Awesome.
There you
Yeah,
go. Hashtag long term works.
you got
Y'all
it.
have a
Long
good
term, long
weekend.
term works. So if anybody wants to find Burning Tree Recovery, Burning Tree Lodge, it's burningtreerecovery.com.
Yeah, burningtree.com or burningtreeprograms.com. And then 866-287-2877.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks so much, Eric. We'll talk soon.
Ciao.
Thanks, Eric.
Have a great
Bye.
day.